Guernica, Spain, on the 26th of April, 1937. Engines thundered overhead, bombs rained down, and by the end of the day, Guernica was left devastated. The man responsible was not the Red Baron, but his cousin, Walter von Richthofen, a leader who was convinced that cities could be crushed from the sky. How did he ascend to become one of the most merciless air commanders in history, and what happened to him after the war was lost? When most people hear the name Richthofen, they immediately think of Manfred, the Red Baron, Germany's famous ace of the First World War. His bright red triplane became a deadly emblem in aerial combat. However, while Manfred's fame lasted, another Richthofen forged a radically different reputation. Walter, the younger cousin, was born in 1895 into the same noble Silesian bloodline. Unlike Manfred, Walter never exuded the allure associated with fighter pilots. He was no natural adrenaline seeker and was not destined to become a celebrated sky hero. His journey was quieter and more deliberate, but led to far greater devastation. If Manfred symbolized the romantic age of dogfights and honor, Walter represented the brutal, mechanized reality of total warfare. During the First World War, Walter began his career as a cavalry officer before transitioning to aviation. He was not a distinguished pilot, but rather served in reconnaissance and technical positions, focusing on intelligence gathering and operational management. He immersed himself in the mechanics of flying and the complexities of maintaining aircraft, and these experiences molded him into a far more formidable figure. More than just a solitary ace, Walter was a strategist, mastering how to coordinate large-scale destruction. When the war concluded in 1918, Germany's military was dismantled under the Treaty of Versailles. Yet, like many determined officers, Walter remained in the diminished Reichswehr. He earned a reputation as a smart staff officer with a knack for modern technology. Although aviation was banned, Walter immersed himself in organization and planning, learning that synchronizing air and ground forces could revolutionize warfare. Throughout the 1920s and early 1930s, he evolved into what could be called a technocrat of destruction. He was not pursuing glory in the cockpit. Instead, he focused on integrating reconnaissance, bombing, and maneuvering into a single, powerful strike. When the Nazis rose to power and began rebuilding Germany's military, Walter was ideally positioned. The Luftwaffe required men capable of thinking beyond piloting, individuals who could view the entire battlefield from the sky and convert that perspective into devastating operations. By the time of the Anschluss in 1938, Walter had climbed the ranks swiftly. Austria's annexation by the German Reich led to a surge in Luftwaffe growth, and Walter showed himself crucial. Unlike his cousin Manfred, known for his solitary red triplane, Walter's strength was the squadron, the grouping, and the grand coordination of air power. His real skill was not in dogfighting, but in strategizing how to deliver overwhelming force. The capacity to unleash devastating firepower upon cities, armies, and entire countries marked a significant shift in warfare. In the years that followed, this distinction would prove crucial. While the Red Baron earned a reputation as an aviation icon, Walter von Richthofen gained notoriety for demonstrating just how catastrophic the power of a contemporary air force could be. In the year 1936, Walter had his first opportunity to put modern aerial warfare to the test, not on German soil, but in Spain. Adolf Hitler dispatched the Condor Legion to support Franco's nationalist forces in the Spanish Civil War. This deployment provided German officers with invaluable first-hand combat experience ahead of the forthcoming global conflict. Walter took a commanding role, overseeing the coordination of air missions. On the 26th of April, 1937, Walter made a lasting impression on history. His bomber units targeted the Basque town of Guernica. For several hours, successive groups of Heinkel and Junkers planes relentlessly dropped explosives and incendiary devices. Civilians were caught helplessly exposed, the town's heart was set ablaze, and hundreds lost their lives. Guernica had no military significance. The attack served no strategic purpose. However, its psychological and symbolic resonance was immense. News of the assault rapidly spread throughout Europe. Newspapers featured images of charred ruins and injured civilians. Pablo Picasso captured the atrocity in his painting Guernica, which remains one of the most powerful anti-war symbols worldwide. For many, the town stood as an emblem of terror from the air, marking the moment when war discarded any attempt to distinguish combatants from non-combatants. Walter von Richthofen, proud of his achievement, regarded the operation as a success. Spain became his battlefield for testing the lethal potential of air power. Walter gained a fearsome reputation as a relentless, effective, and most importantly, pragmatic leader. He showed no concern for civilian casualties, evaluating missions solely by their ability to break enemy morale and speed up victory. In Spain, he crafted the foundation for aerial warfare tactics that would later be adopted throughout Europe by Germany. 2 years after, in September of 1939, Germany launched its invasion of Poland. Walter put his strategies to use in the bombing of Warsaw. Again, large numbers of planes targeted a civilian-filled city. The capital was left in ruins, massive fires destroyed entire neighborhoods, and thousands lost their lives. Just as in Spain, Walter demonstrated that air power could shatter not only defenses, but also the determination to fight. By 1940, as Germany invaded France, Walter's name became a symbol of devastation. However, his role evolved. Rather than conducting only terror bombings, he developed close coordination with the armored tank units, attacking fortified positions, disrupting enemy withdrawals, and clearing routes for major breakthroughs. This combination of air and ground forces, the core of blitzkrieg tactics, allowed the German advances to move with astonishing speed. Within weeks, France was defeated. Behind the tanks, often airborne and directing the strikes, was Walter, now one of Europe's most dreaded air commanders. His strength did not lie in individual dogfights, but in unleashing fiery assaults that devastated cities and changed the nature of modern warfare. By the summer of 1941, Walter had become a general commanding Luftflotte 4. He was assigned to support Army Group South in the massive Operation Barbarossa. Across the enormous front, his air fleet was instrumental in shaping the course of the campaign as it pushed deep into Soviet territory. Across the vast steppes of the former Soviet Union, Walter would demonstrate both the extent and the limitations of German aerial power. From the very beginning, his units struck with overwhelming intensity. Luftflotte 4 decimated hundreds of Soviet planes while still grounded, swiftly establishing air supremacy. Yet Walter's real skill lay in accuracy and determination. Near Kiev in the year 1941, his bombers relentlessly targeted Soviet defenses for several days, enabling German troops to encircle over 500,000 soldiers, one of the largest capitulations in recorded history. For the German High Command, this displayed the true potential of coordinated air and ground operations. After Kiev, Walter shifted his focus to the Crimean Peninsula. The stronghold city of Sevastopol became his subsequent objective. Starting in the latter part of 1941 and escalating throughout 1942, Luftflotte 4 executed one of the most unyielding aerial bombardments of the conflict. Entire districts were reduced to rubble, supply depots destroyed, and artillery installations silenced under a constant barrage of explosives. By June of 1942, Sevastopol finally succumbed. Hitler rewarded Walter with a promotion, recognizing him as one of his most impactful and devastating air commanders. However, the campaign that ultimately cemented his reputation unfolded several months later at Stalingrad. As German forces advanced during the summer of 1942, Walter orchestrated an enormous air offensive aimed at shattering Soviet opposition. On the 23rd of August, his bombers unleashed thousands of tons of bombs within a single day. Flames engulfed entire neighborhoods. Civilians and soldiers alike were trapped beneath the debris, turning Stalingrad into a scorched wasteland. Ironically, the widespread destruction inadvertently assisted the Soviet defenders in their efforts. The ruins transformed into a stronghold, with debris and broken buildings acting as natural barriers. Nevertheless, Walter continued intensifying the air raids, determined to wear down the city completely. Throughout autumn, Luftflotte 4 conducted thousands of missions against Soviet forces stationed along the Volga River. However, by the winter of 1942-43, the flaws in his strategy became clear. When the 6th Army found itself surrounded, Hitler commanded the Luftwaffe to supply it through airlift. Walter, as straightforward as ever, declared this was unfeasible because the capacity simply did not exist. Nevertheless, Hitler was adamant. The aircraft struggled against harsh weather and conditions, managing to deliver only a small portion of the necessary supplies. The Sixth Army suffered from hunger and cold, ultimately surrendering in February 1943. The collapse of Stalingrad marked a decisive moment in the war. Walter had shown himself to be a master of destruction, but even his accuracy and expertise could not stop the downfall. He remained among Hitler's most trusted air leaders, both respected and feared for his effectiveness, yet growing more frustrated by the demands the Luftwaffe could no longer fulfill. By 1943, Walter's reputation was simultaneously admired and dreaded. Within the Luftwaffe, he was regarded as a brilliant strategist, relentless in carrying out operations, and completely unsentimental. To those above him, he was reliable. To his enemies, he was the creator of devastating firestorms: Guernica, Warsaw, Sevastopol, Stalingrad. At the core of it all was a simple fact. Walter's approach was unyielding ruthlessness. Whenever faced with a challenge, he never hesitated to respond with merciless force. His response remained consistent: unparalleled air power to force the enemy into submission. For a while, this strategy proved effective. Yet by 1943 and 1944, the nature of the conflict was shifting beyond his influence. The Luftwaffe found itself stretched too thin and steadily losing strength. Devastating setbacks on the Eastern Front drained their resources. Meanwhile, Allied air superiority expanded in both quantity and capability, extending its range with growing reach. American bombers dominated daylight raids while the Royal Air Force operated through the night. The Luftwaffe no longer held command of the skies as before. Walter, always pragmatic, witnessed these changes firsthand. Pilots became scarce, fuel supplies dwindled, and losses were impossible to replenish. His once vast squadrons diminished in size, sorties declined sharply, and missions took on a desperate tone. Instead of orchestrating massive assaults, he resorted to small, scattered strikes that lacked the power to alter the course of the war. By 1944, Walter's standing began to decline. Other commanders, such as Albert Kesselring in Italy, controlled broader fronts and captured Adolf Hitler's focus. Walter was sidelined while the Luftwaffe struggled simply to endure. The doctrine he had honed, relying on overwhelming air power at crucial moments, had become unfeasible. Germany no longer possessed the means to carry it out. Nevertheless, Walter remained true to his nature, forthright, uncompromising, and analytical. He conveyed harsh realities that others preferred to hide. When Hitler demanded miracles, Walter responded only with facts, no matter how grim they were. Like many leaders, he recognized the war's inevitable defeat long before Hitler came to terms with it. As the Third Reich unraveled in 1945, numerous generals braced themselves to either escape, surrender, or face death on the battlefield. Walter confronted a different battle, one waged within his own body. In the month of April 1945, as the Allied forces advanced closer, he was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor. The commander, who was once tireless, known for his keen mind and relentless drive, was brought low by his illness. He maintained his position in title only. By the time Germany surrendered in May, Walter was too frail to influence any outcomes. Captured by American troops, Walter did not face trial like Goering, Kesselring, or Löhr. Instead, he spent his last weeks in captivity, consumed by his disease. On the 12th of July, 1945, only 2 months after Germany's defeat, he passed away in a U.S. military hospital located in Austria. He was 50 years of age. For the Allied officials preparing the Nuremberg trials, his death was anticlimactic. This was a man connected to Guernica, Warsaw, Sevastopol, and Stalingrad. Yet his case never reached the courtroom. His contemporaries recognized him as one of the Luftwaffe's most capable leaders. He had the ability to orchestrate large-scale air missions, support rapid tank advances, and coordinate precise strikes, talents that fueled Germany's early successes. His death spared him the trials faced by others. Alexander Löhr faced execution. Albert Kesselring received a life sentence. Hugo Sperolo stood trial. Walter's tumor prevented history from delivering a formal judgment. Instead, his legacy is written in the ruins of Guernica, the debris of Warsaw, and the devastated avenues of Stalingrad. 2 cousins, 2 wars. One remembered as a knight of the skies. The other, often remembered as the relative who devastated Europe with relentless bombings. That concludes this tale. Thank you for tuning in. If you are curious about how the conflict unfolded in a distinct way for another Luftwaffe leader, check out our video about Alexander Löhr, the general who ultimately met his fate by firing squad in Belgrade. Make sure to like, subscribe, and press the notification bell so you never miss the upcoming historical episode.